Mr. Stanton, we'll start with you. With cuts to state and local budgets affecting access to quality health care and preventative services, what is the role of the City of Phoenix in filling these gaps, particularly around sexual and reproductive health?
First, everybody knows the budget was just passed. We're all waiting to see whether the governor signs it or not. It has a devastating impact on so many things, including a direct impact on the city's budget. It's irresponsible for the state legislature to try to balance their budget on the backs of cities, and that's an issue where we need to speak loudly and with a very clear voice that it's inappropriate to do that. The City of Phoenix has its own budget issues, and we've got to face those challenges head on, but we don't need the legislature piling on. On issues of sexual health, et cetera, particularly for the LBGT community, look, we need One Voice Community Center, which is a critically important entity in this community. We need to make sure that it is fully supported and funded as it was supposed to be in the bond program from a few years ago, because that's a critically important place for us to provide information to the community about things like that. We have lots of opportunities to provide information to young people about the importance of sexual health, et cetera, through social workers, counselors, et cetera, even counselors in our housing programs. We should take full advantage of that. So that should be something that's incorporated into all of the city programs in which we interact with folks in need who could use that information.
Mr. Gullett?
One of the things that, as the state shrinks its budget and starts cost shifting off to the City of Phoenix, that's one of the reasons why we've got to be fiscally prepared. Budgets are going to get tighter and tighter. We've got to work with and create partnerships with nonprofits, with for-profit companies to make sure that we can give all of the services that we need to give to people, especially people who are being cut off from the state. But it's partnerships. And we have resources that our partners can benefit from, and our partners have resources that we can benefit from and the citizens can benefit from. And so we've got to bring people together. We've got to work on these issues together and be willing to sit around the table and come up with creative partnerships for the future, because we can't just rely on raising taxes and increasing fees and rates and not look at it seriously and say we've got to partner with the private sector.
Mr. Mattox.
Thank you. One of the things that we are facing on a regular basis, and we were just reading about it today, and we've been hearing more and more about it, is it seems that every time the legislature says we're not going to do this anymore, there's an expectation that the city's going to pick it up. And we can't afford to do these additional services. We can't afford to do a lot of the services that we've been doing. So what we do need to do is we need to reach out, as I have encouraged the city to do for the last couple of years, and we are now in the process of doing that, reach out to those out in the private sector, those either from a civic perspective or those from a business perspective who can provide those services, and work with them and support them in providing the services that are available or we need to have available out there. For the City of Phoenix to continue to try to pick up additional expenses in a time when we're looking at how we can streamline our operation it does not make sense.
Let's start with Mr. Stanton on this question. Accessibility to gender-neutral or family restrooms is important, particularly to the transgender and gender-variant residents. Would you support efforts to increase the number of accessible family single-stall restrooms in the city, in public places, and in public accommodations?
The answer is yes, I would work with those organizations. I want to learn more about the issue, of course, because it's an issue I'm not particularly well-versed in, and I'll admit that. But if it's a fairness issue, it's an equality issue, then it's something that the city should be looking at and doing all we can to support our citizens. So I always keep an open mind, an open door, an open heart, and would look forward to working with this organization and others in getting the job done right.
Well, and in many cases, it's a safety issue. Transgender folks using public restrooms, it's a safety issue in many people.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Gullett?
Yes, I would.
Mr. Mattox?
Yes.
Mr. Eichenaur?
Yes, I would.
Very good. Mr. Eichenaur, let's start with you. The poor are suffering disproportionately in this economy. Cuts to public transportation, child care, health care, no jobs to be found. How is it possibly realistic for the city to kind of fill in some of these gaps? Many of you talked about education as well. The education, the budget has just been decimated. As a city, there's only so much you can do. What specifically could you do to fill in some of these gaps?
I think there's a possibility that the city of Phoenix may not be able to fill some of these gaps. There are challenges facing the city of Phoenix, the people that live here, and sometimes government will not be the solution and cannot be the solution because there's only so much money to be had, and the government can only impound so much of it for its services.
And Mr. Mattox, specifically to you, sir, you talked a lot about partnerships, reaching out to the private sector. When we're talking about issues of budget cuts and crunches, things that have to do with the poor taking the worst of the brunt, summer programs being cut, kids not having things to do, can you give me a specific example of where you'd reach out and what you would do as a partnership?
Well, I can tell you that we are already looking at and have, working with our Parks and Recreation Department with organizations that provide services, so that if we have a building that is sitting vacant and someone wants to come in and use that building to provide services that we can no longer provide because we do not have the general fund dollars to provide that service, we can provide the building and let that organization provide the service. And we're doing that throughout the city of Phoenix. I'm very proud of what we're accomplishing in the city of Phoenix in this tough economy. We're streamlining our operation, but we're not necessarily having to cut programs because we're looking at different ways. We're working a different model, and successfully. And so I'm going to continue to look at how we can partner with organizations that can provide the services that we can no longer provide, especially for the poor who have been suffering and have had a very difficult time in this economy.
Mr. Gullett, you as well talked about partnerships, and we're reminding folks the last couple of years, I think it's been 2 or 3 years now, that some of the pools have been closed in rotation. The hours of the pools and Parks and Rec programs have been cut.
Right, we have to, those services are critically important, and that's why we've got to look to find savings and efficiencies within city government. In my neighborhood, they just put in a big new roundabout. My opponents here who have been on the city council say, well, that came out of a different fund, but we didn't need that roundabout. What we need to do is keep the pools open in the summertime for our kids, have Head Start programs that are actually working and functioning. We've got, and one of the things we've got to do is we've got to roll back the tax on food. That's why, one of the reasons why I was against the water rate increase was because the two things that we have to have and that poor people have to have are water and food. We raise taxes on food and then we raise taxes on water. It doesn't make any sense to me when we don't need to do that. We need to hold the line on those costs to people, and we need to cut government spending so that we can fund the important functions that we do, like keeping pools and Head Start programs going.
Mr. Stanton.
One of my guiding principles in this campaign and throughout my time in public service is really the theory of one city, one neighborhood. What happens to any child across the city affects all of us. What happens in any neighborhood across the city affects all neighborhoods. We have to adopt that attitude. I made human services one of my priorities as a city council member. It's the reason why the Children's Action Alliance gave me their Jackie Steiner Leadership Award while I was serving the city council, or the Arizona Community Action Association gave me the Presidential Leadership Award, because I understand what happens to the poor affects all of us, and they really represent the future of our economy as well. We have to view it in those terms. Partnerships, of course we got to do partnerships. You mentioned the pools. I take our kids to swimming every Saturday morning. Bob Hubbard Swim Pool has offered to work with the city of Phoenix to provide some swimming programs and lessons for kids, etc. Creative partnerships like that have to be the future, but first and foremost, we have to make it a priority for the mayor and the council. It has to be a higher level of part of the agenda in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eichenaur.
When it comes to pools, If the government has had to shut down or reduce hours, then perhaps it's time to look into either privatizing the pools, selling off the facilities, and simply getting out of the pool business.
Mr. Mattox, we are going to start with you at the other end for your 30-second closing statement.
Well, thank you all very much for the time. I'm just going to close by saying I want to be mayor because I can make a difference. I want to be your voice for strong neighborhoods, for quality schools, to attract career jobs. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. It's good to see everyone.
I want to thank Equality Arizona for hosting this. It's so important for the voters of Phoenix to hear from all of the candidates for mayor. And I appreciate that we would have all of you come out here tonight to hear what we had to say. I hope to be your mayor because I know that working together, we can make Phoenix the greatest city in America. Thanks.
Well, I too want to thank Equality Arizona for hosting tonight's debate. I also want to thank the person that's not in the room, and that's Mayor Phil Gordon for his 8 great years of service to the city of Phoenix. He deserves a round of applause. You know, the Wall Street Journal a couple days ago said that Phoenix is the most miserable city in the country. Well, I got something to say to the Wall Street Journal. You don't know the people of this city. I, for one, I'm not miserable. I'm optimistic. I know that there is limitless talent among the people in this room and in our community, but only if we make smarter choices going forward into the future. If you select me as mayor, I'll be ready from day one. I'll move this city forward, and I'll make you proud. Thank you very much.
Mr. Eichenaur.
I'm looking forward in the oncoming weeks and months to debating my opponents. I look forward to future forums where I hope that all the candidates for office will be included. And my name's Thane Eichenaur. Please vote for me.
Well, thank you very much all for coming out. I do know that if there's any press available, that the candidates will still be up here and they'll probably be hanging around if any of you have one-on-one questions for them. Please, we encourage you to get involved. August 30th, please let your vote count. And on behalf of Equality Arizona, thank you very much. One more round of applause for our candidates tonight.